For many years, I thought that I, Andrea Wilson, did not have the capacity to love. Perhaps it had something to do with my spoiled childhood and my even more spoiled mother. My mother, Bree, was a serial flirt and cheater. She got away with it for years because she was very pretty, and people tend to give pretty women the benefit of the doubt. Bree's actions and lack of consequences taught me that. She had 3 husbands after my biological father, and she handled all the divorces well, although she accelerated them. Moving from dad to dad wasn't much fun, nor was moving from school to school, but I survived primarily because I didn't care about liking any place, thing, or person. Thanks to pure DNA, I was also born beautiful. No one should brag about their beautiful appearance because you have nothing to do with it. It's simple genetics. I didn't consider myself cool just because I looked good, because it wasn't my fault. But that didn't mean I wouldn't use my looks to my advantage. I used my good looks to my advantage at every opportunity. Bree taught me well through her actions. Even if I sometimes cursed her for it, I used my sex appeal to get the grades, jobs, and guys I wanted, even though I was smart enough to get them without sex appeal, but it was more fun to use sex appeal. Even though I never fell in love, I often had sex, although always with condoms. We'll always put the word in quotation marks because I didn't use them when I was 19. I'm not sure how it happened, but I was drinking too much of everything for the second time in my life when my best friend of the month, a really handsome, rich, smart, but shallow college graduate, and I were having sex. I know the first time it was with a condom because even in my haze I clearly remember him putting it on. However, I dreamed that there was a second round later that night. I didn't realize it wasn't a dream for months because I had a massive hangover when my buddy took me to the shower first thing in the morning, causing quite a commotion in his dorm. I was one of those rare women who didn't actually start to experience my baby bump until I was about 20 weeks pregnant, and I never had morning sickness. I did feel a little hormonal, but since I was being serviced by several different guys on a regular basis, I thought it was just because I was having good sex. By the time I suspected that something was wrong, I was about 21 weeks pregnant, and by that time, even if I had been abortive, which I probably would have been if I had, there was a legitimate choice and time to think about it. It was almost too late to plan for it properly. So, my freshman year of college, I had to take a temporary break from classes to give birth to my bouncing baby, girl weighing 6 pounds, 8 ounces, and 19 inches long, whom I named Lainey. Luckily, I didn't have the same economic pressures as a typical 19-year-old single mother. Because my mother was rich thanks to numerous divorce settlements, she supported me and little Lainey and was actually a much better grandmother than she was a mother. I made it clear to Bree that I didn't want her values in life to be passed on to little Lainey. And surprisingly, Bree wasn't even offended by what I said. With financial help from my mother, I not only completed my university education with honors, but also received an MBA, also with honors by the time I was 23 and Lainey was almost 4 years old. Because I was apparently incapable of romantic love, I did love Lainey, and as she got older, almost fell in love with Bree. But obviously that was a familial kind of love. I never married for love. However, I had been married 4 times by the time Lainey entered college as a 17-year-old freshman. She was very smart and had skipped a grade. These marriages were done so that I would have a willing sexual partner and to give Lainey a father, and married businesswomen seemed to be more respected. I discovered that I had real business acumen and was very successful, first working for a Fortune 500 company and then starting my own. One of the businesses I started was a national chain of fitness centers. As a company representative, I felt I needed to be in top physical shape, so I worked very hard to maintain my genetically endowed good looks. I decided that Lainey would be my only biological child. While my first 3 husbands were wealthy, I insisted on a prenup with each of them, which worked for me since, despite their wealth, I made more money than them. I kept my maiden name, Wilson, through each of my marriages. For some reason, Bree insisted on providing Lainey and I with lavish gifts, even though we didn't really need them. I mean, did 16-year-old Lainey really need a pearl blue Corvette with white leather interior? Since Lainey was mature and responsible for her age, I didn't reject the idea. I was kind to each of my first 3 husbands. They were between decent and good fathers to Lainey, and 2 of them also had children from other marriages, so Lainey had siblings during her formative years. I never cheated on them. I enjoyed sex with them until I got bored, and then I divorced them as amicably as possible. I know they had some lingering feelings, especially when I explained to them that I never really loved them, or anyone else. But there was nothing I could do. I was with my 4th husband, Brad, when Lainey left for college. I only married Brad for the opportunity to have regular sex and maintain my image for the companies I owned, not because Lainey really needed a father figure, and certainly not because I suddenly developed the capacity for romantic love. Lainey's lack of need for a father figure was partly due to the fact that she had an excellent relationship with my 2nd husband, Peter, and Peter's 2 daughters, who were 2 and 3 years older than Lainey. Lainey was a mature for her age 18-year-old college sophomore, and I was 37 when she brought her new boyfriend, Alex, to our mini mansion during Christmas break. Lainey and I texted or talked on the phone almost every day, and besides her schoolwork, Alex was the main topic of our conversations. Despite Lainey's maturity, I was a little concerned about her relationship with Alex, since he was in his first year of business school and had worked for 2 years before going to graduate school, so he was 24, almost 6 years older than her. On Friday, when Lainey and Alex arrived, I had some pressing business with my fitness company, so they were already chatting with Brad in the living room and holding drinks when I got home. Just as I was about to enter the living room and announce my presence, I stopped in my tracks. I saw Alex in profile, and my heart fluttered. I froze for a time I can't estimate, maybe just a few seconds, but my mind wasn't working properly, so I can't be sure. Then I slowly and quietly backed away and found a comfortable chair to sit in the office and regain my composure. I have never felt like I did at this moment. I thought that perhaps, despite my high level of fitness, I had a health emergency. I was flushed, my hands were sticky, and my heart continued to flutter. By doing deep breathing exercises, I was finally able to calm down. I decided it wasn't a health emergency but a reaction to Alex, but I couldn't figure out what the reaction was. I steeled myself and then curiously walked the 30 or so steps to the living room, my high heels clicking on the marble floor, and entered. Lainey came over and gave me a big hug. Brad kissed me on the cheek, and then Lainey happily said, "Mom, this is my friend Alex. Alex, this is my mother Andrea, and don't call her anything other than Andrea if you want to be on good terms with her." I said, "It's nice to finally meet you, Alex." And he said, "So do I, Andrea, although I feel like I almost already know you, reading articles about you in Business Week and the Wall Street Journal." When we exchanged greetings, we shook hands, but he took my right hand with both hands. I felt a jolt of electricity run down my spine and felt a little unsteady as he smiled at me. For the next few minutes, the 4 of us had a pleasant conversation, although I have absolutely no memory of what it was about. For some reason, the chemicals were rushing through my body like water in the Amazon after a thunderstorm. I came out of my stupor when the maid announced that dinner was served and we retired to the dining room. During dinner, I didn't know what the hell was happening to my body. I kept glancing at Alex. He and Lainey were sitting across from Brad and me at the dinner table, and had a surprising negative reaction when he and Lainey kissed a few times in quick succession. I think we had a stimulating dinner conversation as there seemed to be a lot of talking and laughing, but like the living room conversation, none of it stuck in my head. After dinner, Lainey announced that she and Alex were going to a party with some of her classmates and their college friends in a nearby suburb, so they hopped into her Corvette and drove off. When they left, I suddenly had a feeling of loss and anxiety, and I'm not an anxious or emotional person, so I again wondered what the hell was going on. I decided that I needed to shower and change into casual clothes, so I told Brad that I would go up to our bedroom. When I went up to the master bedroom to change, I took off my panties and they were soaking wet, obviously something I hadn't realized during the conversations in the living room and dining room. I took a shower and tried to intellectually determine what the hell was going on. I partially convinced myself that I had never seen Lainey with a man who was her boyfriend before, and for some reason, this alarmed me. I wondered if this was the right thing to do, however, when Brad walked into the bedroom as I was coming out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel. The first thing that came to my mind was, I need sex now. Brad was telling me something innocuous when I dropped the towel wrapped around my body, walked over to him, and wrapped one arm around his neck. Brad was a little confused because he couldn't remember me attacking him shortly after dinner, but he's not one to look a gift horse in the mouth. So soon he was naked too. Even though it was only about 9:30, I was emotionally exhausted and fell asleep. Obviously, Brad slowly pulled away from me and stood up, not ready to end it there. I woke up with a start and looked at the bedside clock. As far as I could tell, it showed 10:42. I got up, showered again, put on just my robe, and then went to find Brad, knowing that the cook and maid had left for the night. He was in our entertainment center, watching a Liam Neeson film. I slid next to him on the couch and was greeted with a wide smile. "I really like it when you come home excited," he chuckled. "It was as good as it can be." "Oh, really?" I giggled. Even though it was a Saturday morning, my internal body clock woke me up at 6 in the morning. In fact, this was quite normal for me, according to the training schedule that I followed religiously. I put on my sweatpants, quickly made a small protein shake in the kitchen, and then headed to our large, fully equipped gym. Concentrating on the exercises, I tried to understand what happened to me last night. I can usually sort out my thoughts during a workout, but that morning I seemed completely confused. My confusion increased when the door to the gym opened at about 6:45, and Alex walked in while I was using the elliptical machine. "Oh, sorry, Andrea. I didn't know there was anyone else here," he said with a smile. "Don't leave because of me," I answered. "There's plenty of space here. Do whatever exercise you want." "So you don't mind if I use the machines and free weights?" "Help yourself," I smiled. Although I was polite and really shouldn't have been concerned about Alex working out at the same time as me, the way his muscles shook as he did various lifts bothered me. I think I should describe Alex. He was about 6 feet 2 or 3 inches tall and about 200 pounds of what appeared to be pure muscle. He clearly knew his way around the gym. He had light brown hair, steely cobalt blue eyes, and a skier's nose. Luckily, Alex wasn't the chatty Katie when we were training, as I don't like to talk much when I'm training. However, I looked at him every chance I got, and I noticed that he glanced at me from time to time. When I, sweating like an animal, got off the elliptical trainer and started a circuit workout, Alex smiled and said, "Seeing the intensity of your workout, it's no surprise that you're the fittest CEO in history, just like the Business Week article said." I probably blushed. I'm not sure if this is true, but I think that if I'm going to represent a national fitness company, I need to be in shape. Although we didn't really get in each other's way, we chatted a little more as he continued lifting weights, and I continued my circuit training. When I got to the bench press with free weights, he asked, "Do you need a spotter?" I stupidly said, "Of course, if you don't mind." Although I never go anywhere near my maximum weight, I do 2 sets of 15 with a short refractory period and sometimes experience muscle fatigue during the second set. When I had a slight glitch in setting the barbell up after my first set, he came over to me and picked up the barbell. He was wearing loose shorts and no jockstrap, and I got a good, if fleeting, view from below. After that, I knew I couldn't hold it in any longer, so I stood up from the weights bench, pointed at the clock on the wall, and muttered, "Oh, crap, I forgot to do something, and it's almost 7:45. I will have to cut my training short, but please use all the equipment you want." Then I grabbed my sweaty exercise towel and ran out of the gym. I was breathing heavily and feeling dizzy as I walked up the stairs to the master bedroom. When I walked into the bedroom, Brad was yawning and stretching, having just woken up. I immediately shed my sports bra and shorts, quickly kicked off my shoes, and, wearing socks and not even showering, I threw my sweaty body on top of Brad. The rest of the weekend went pretty smoothly. I managed to control myself not to stare at Alex and actually had several reasonable conversations with him, which I even remembered later. On Saturday night, the 4 of us went to a club where I danced more energetically than I had danced in years, And on Sunday afternoon, we went to a show. When Alex hugged me goodbye early Monday morning as he left, I had a very strange feeling in my nether regions. Even though it was the Christmas season and I could have avoided going to work on Monday, I decided to stop by for a few hours for one specific reason: to find out what the hell was going on with me. I was afraid that I had fallen in love with my daughter's boyfriend, but since I had never been romantically in love, I needed to investigate it in a cold, factual manner. You'd think a 37-year-old woman who's been married 4 times wouldn't have to search the internet for what are the physical manifestations of love, but I did. There were a lot of sites with a lot of tidbits, but none of them were scientifically formulated to the extent that love can be discussed scientifically. Until after a good 45 minutes of searching, I came across a website called something like Live Science, and it was on page 13 of the search results. This was exactly what I was looking for. According to researchers from Rutgers University, led by anthropologist Helen Fisher, scientists have determined with a high degree of confidence what it means to fall in love. Supposedly, on an MRI, the brain of someone in love looks very different from that of someone experiencing simple sexual desire or lust. And it also doesn't look like the brain of someone in a long-term, committed relationship. The biological basis of the falling in love phase is unique and has about a dozen characteristic features. While wading through scientific jargon, I tried to relate these signs to my situation. The thought, "this person is special," a thought you haven't had before or in a long time. I've never reacted like that before. Only the positive qualities of a special person are considered. I didn't notice any negative qualities in Alex. Emotional instability. In just 4 days, I experienced several mood swings, including agitation, anxiety, and rapid breathing, obsessive thinking. Hell, I've spent more time in the last 4 days either thinking about Alex or trying not to think about Alex than I have on anything else. Attraction. Heck, I used to have jealousy attacks when Alex would kiss or hug my own daughter and he was her boyfriend. Psychological transfer. Nothing else could explain how I had wild sex with Brad an unprecedented number of times when I was around Alex, and at some point during each time I thought about Alex. Around this point, I stopped my logical approach to the problem, didn't even worry about other possible factors, and reluctantly accepted the only reasonable thing. I fell in love for the first time in my life and was cursed because A, he was 13 years younger than me, B, he was my daughter's boyfriend, and C, I was married. Could it get any worse? Unfortunately, the answer is yes. I made many more trips to see Lainey in college than before, knowing that I would also be seeing Alex, often training with him while Lainey was in class, since his schedule was much more open and less rigid than her. I invited one of his small, exclusive business workshops to my headquarters to see how we handle innovation, incubation, and diversity hiring and promotion. And I invited him to take a quick trip with Lainey, Brad, and I to Aruba during late winter, early spring break. As for the trip, of course, he secretly glanced at Alex when we were on the beach or at the pool. At the same time, the thought quickly flashed through my mind that perhaps his sunglasses were edged to prevent detection if he was staring at me in my bikini. However, during this entire time, I tried never to publicly show affection for Alex. At least I thought I avoided any display of affection. It was towards the end of summer. I hadn't seen Alex in months, although he often intruded on my thoughts, especially when he shouldn't have, like when I was fucking Brad. I didn't see Alex primarily because he was finishing up graduate school, taking classes all summer after a heavy workload during the regular school year. However, he and I talked on the phone from time to time about what kind of job he should look for after graduation. Near the end of the summer, Brad was on an extended business trip and Lainey was traveling around Europe for pleasure. It was Saturday morning, and I had let the maid and cook go for the weekend, had just finished an intense 2-hour workout, and was sipping a cocktail when the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, Alex was standing there in shorts and a polo shirt. "Alex, what are you doing here?" I asked, slightly embarrassed by my sweaty state and skimpy workout clothes. Alex solemnly took off his sunglasses, stared at me like a cobra at its prey, and then announced, "Lainey and I broke up." When what he said finally registered in my confused brain, I asked, "Why?" "First of all, because she doesn't like the fact that I'm in love with her mother, and it seems like it's mutual." When I swallowed and felt weak, Alex entered the lobby, threw his sunglasses aside, kicked the door closed, looked me in the face, and quietly clarified, "Is this mutual?" I stared at him, trembling, unable to utter a word. He picked me up and planted the most passionate kiss of my entire experience on my lips. I resisted for about 2.5 seconds. Then I wrapped my arms around his neck and kissed him back as passionately as he kissed me. I don't remember how we walked the 30 or 40 steps from the lobby to the thickly carpeted living room floor. I didn't realize it until I realized it after my clothes were ripped off. "I love you," he declared, stroking my face. "I love you," I said back. For the first time in my life, not counting my mother and daughter, I actually meant it. After a few more exchanges, Alex picked me up, carried me to one of the guest rooms, and, with the exception of some time to eat, shower, and sleep, we indulged in sexual pleasures until Monday morning. You'd think things would get more complicated on Monday morning. In fact, it's the opposite. Everything became very simple. The first thing I did was call Lainey. I would have preferred to meet face to face, but she wouldn't be there for another 10 days or so, and I couldn't wait. Lainey answered the call. "Hey, Mom, I bet you have some news for me." "Why do you think so, dear? Why couldn't I just call to chat like we usually do?" "Because Alex already told me that he was breaking up with me and explained why. I'm sure you were with him all weekend." After a pause, I replied, "Actually, honey, I mostly made love to him, and this is the first time in my life that I made love rather than sex." "Sorry, honey, but I fell in love with him from the first second I saw him. As you well know, I am not a normal person. This is the only time I've been in love in my life. You're a normal person, and I know you'll find love with someone else, but I can't fool myself into thinking that if I stood up to him, he'd love you." Another pause followed. "I know, Mom, I'm not blind. I could tell there was a mutual attraction from the moment I first introduced you. A few months ago, I accepted that it was only a matter of time before you two could no longer hide your love. I can handle it. Just please, at least, for the first year, we don't have to stick together." "I love you, Lainey, darling," I answered, my voice choking with emotion. "I love you too, Mom," Lainey replied with the same feeling. And then we ended the conversation at the same time. The next person I wanted to talk to was Brad. He tried to call me over the weekend, but I didn't answer the phone. That day I caught Brad between meetings. "Brad, honey, are you sure you can't come home early from your business trip? There is something I need to talk to you about, and I prefer to do it face to face." "What? Do you feel bad because you left me over the phone?" He chuckled. "Let me make this easier for you, Andrea. I knew when we got married that it wouldn't be forever. I mean, you've already had 3 other husbands. Why should I be special? Plus, like Lainey, I felt a connection between you and Alex after talking to her this morning." I interrupted Brad. "Did you talk to Lainey today?" "Yes, when I couldn't reach you, I called her and she told me the news, which was not a surprise. However, I am disappointed that I am the only one of your 4 husbands that you cheated on," he replied in a stern but not angry voice. "I'm ashamed and I'm sorry about it, Brad. You don't deserve this. But I couldn't help it. Please forgive me, but this is something. This is the first time I've truly fallen in love," I answered, almost crying. "Yes, Andrea, that's what I understood," and Lainey confirmed it. "However, I expect you to economically sweeten the deal when we get divorced as a noble act on your part. I will find another place as soon as my business trip is over. Thank you for your understanding, Brad. I will try to make everything as simple and useful as possible for you." "Bye," I interrupted the conversation. Now that I had truly fallen in love for the first time in my life, I embraced the feeling with passion and determination. I asked Alex to move into my home and begged him to start his career as a manager at one of my subsidiaries that manufactured and sold nutritional supplements. Brad was back from his business trip and Lainey was from Europe, and although meeting with them was awkward, I tried to make things as easy as possible and vowed to do whatever they wanted me to do to satisfy their feelings. A payment of $250,000 more than the prenuptial agreement required satisfied Brad. A sincere apology and a promise to give Lainey a little sister seemed to calm her down. Alex and I got married as soon as my divorce from Brad became final. Since this was the first time I was marrying for love, I was not going to enter into a prenuptial agreement. But Alex showed his character, he was not a gold digger, and insisted on a contract. It's been 5 years since Alex and I got married. I never thought that life could be as good as it is now when I'm in love. I have reduced the number of hours I work to take care of my 2 children with Alex, a little girl, promised to Lainey's sister, although Lainey treats her like a favorite niece, named Brittany, and a little boy named Blake. Bree died and, at my insistence, left Lainey all her money and property. Lainey quickly used 80% of it to start a charity for disadvantaged children, which she runs with her husband Tim. Lainey and Tim bought a house just 1,000 yards from Alex and I and visit almost every weekend, and take Brittany and Blake out on field trips every chance they get. And when they do, Alex and I spend the entire time in bed. Falling in love and staying in love is great. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.